In the early 1990s, a small countryside park in North Yorkshire set out to do something no one expected. Lightwater Valley wasn't a major player in the theme park world, but it was about to build the longest roller coaster on Earth. Sprawling through forest and farmland, the Ultimate was bold, ambitious, and utterly unique. It promised to transform the park, but while the ride captured imaginations, its story would be one of ambition, struggle, and ultimately demolition. This is the rise and fall of one of the most daring coasters ever built. Lightwater Valley's story began not as a theme park, but as a simple pick-your-own-fruit farm. Established in 1969 by the Staveley family, the farm's picturesque countryside setting made it an appealing location for visitors. As the years went on, the family saw an opportunity to expand beyond agriculture and turn their land into a visitor attraction. In 1976, a severe drought threatened the farm, prompting a major change that would shape its future. To prevent such issues from happening again, the Staveleys excavated a large lake on the property. Unexpectedly, the new lake became a major attraction for visitors, who were drawn to its scenic views and the opportunity to take out rowing boats and canoes. This success marked a turning point, shifting the farm to a fledgling leisure destination. As interest in the park grew, the Staveleys introduced more attractions to keep visitors entertained. Over subsequent years, Lightwater Valley transformed into a country park attraction, featuring an adventure playground, BMX bikes, go-karts, a pitch-and-putt golf course, and a towering vertical drop slide known as the Hell Slide. These additions helped define the park's identity, offering a blend of outdoor recreation and family fun. A large step forward came in 1985, with the introduction of the park's first true thrill ride, Devil's Cascade. This lightly themed splash boat attraction provided a new level of excitement. Unlike the smaller amusements that had come before it, Devil's Cascade proved that visitors were eager for bigger, more thrilling rides. Its success convinced Robert Staveley, then owner of the park, that Lightwater Valley needed more. He envisioned bringing a roller coaster to the park, a significant leap from the family-oriented attractions Lightwater Valley had previously operated. However, not everyone shared his enthusiasm. His wife was concerned about preserving the park's country setting and feared that a roller coaster would change its atmosphere. As a compromise, a creative solution was proposed. Rather than building a traditional exposed roller coaster that would stand out against the natural backdrop, Staveley decided the ride would be hidden from view. A large area of land was excavated, and a partially buried warehouse-style building was constructed. Once complete, it was surrounded by embankments and trees to ensure it blended into the landscape. The ride itself took advantage of the enclosed setting. The theme centred on a murky underground sewer system overrun by rats. Guests would descend into this subterranean environment before boarding the coaster. The darkness, combined with sudden turns, drops and theming, created an immersive experience that was unusual for a small British park at the time. When it debuted in 1987, the Rat was an immediate hit. The park saw a sharp rise in visitor numbers, with attendance nearly doubling that season. Riding high on the success of the Rat, the park introduced another roller coaster the following year. In 1988, Lightwater Valley unveiled Soopa Loopa, a compact steel looping coaster featuring 2 vertical loops. Unlike the Rat, which relied on theming and darkness, Soopa Loopa was more about visual impact and intensity. It was Britain's fastest roller coaster at the time of opening, and even featured unique backward-facing cars that gave riders a completely different perspective through the inversions. While both the Rat and Soopa Loopa elevated the park's profile and offered the kind of thrills visitors had been craving, they were fundamentally limited in scope. These were not custom-designed rides built specifically for Lightwater Valley. Instead, they were off-the-shelf coaster models, and similar rides could be seen at travelling fairs and seaside amusement parks across the country. They weren't particularly large or groundbreaking, and they didn't offer the same prestige as permanent, individually designed attractions. However, Robert Staveley had achieved his goal of bringing roller coasters to Lightwater Valley, and the success of these early roller coasters had opened the door for bigger ambitions. If Lightwater Valley was going to compete with other major UK parks, it needed something truly special, a signature attraction that couldn't be found anywhere else. At the time, much of the park's development had been focused around its central and northern areas, but the Staveley family still owned a large expanse of land in the southwest, untouched and full of potential. Within this land, a sweeping natural valley was identified as the perfect site for something bold. A massive terrain-hugging roller coaster that would take full advantage of the landscape, using the contours of the area to deliver a coaster experience unlike anything other in the UK. But there was a problem. The chosen valley lay well beyond the main areas of the park, separated by fields and woodland. Getting guests out there would require a lengthy walk or some form of transportation. At first, the park considered constructing an aerial cable car system, serving as both a practical solution and a scenic attraction in its own right. But ultimately, this idea was dismissed because it wasn't thrilling enough. Instead, an alternative was proposed. Rather than taking guests to a distant ride, why not make the journey part of the experience? The station for the new roller coaster would be constructed within the main park, and the coaster itself would venture far out into the secluded valley, giving the ride a sprawling, unforgettable layout. To make this possible, 2 large lift hills would be needed, one to carry the train out to the valley and another to return it toward the park, allowing the ride to maintain momentum along its massive length. The initial concept was for a wooden roller coaster, in keeping with the traditional country park aesthetic. But concerns about maintenance costs led to a change of plan. Only the massive lift hills would be constructed from Canadian redwood, with the rest of the track built from steel. It was a practical compromise that allowed the ride to keep its imposing wooden appearance while benefiting from the durability of steel. The budget for the project was set at £1.2 million, and Lightwater Valley turned to a small British firm, Big Country Motioneering, to design and build the attraction. The company had found success during the late 1980s, primarily working on log flumes like Cherokee Falls at the American Adventure and compact mine train rides. This would be their most ambitious undertaking by far, but it quickly became clear that the scale of the project posed challenges. Though the ride was originally slated to open in 1990, construction didn't even begin until early that year. The track itself was provided by Tubular Engineering, a company based in Tyneside, more familiar with producing barriers for marathons than amusement rides. The track would be constructed using 9mm tubular rails and would require over 300 tonnes of steel in total. As work progressed, it became clear that Big Country Motioneering was struggling. Delays and design issues mounted, and the company was eventually dismissed partway through construction. With the build already underway, Staveley turned to an unlikely source: engineers from British Rail, the UK's national railway operator. Working in collaboration with an in-house team, they took over the project. Substantial changes were made to the original layout. Turns were reprofiled, banking was adjusted, and parts of the ride were redesigned entirely. The trains themselves required modifications. Originally outfitted with small wheels, they were found to be unsuitable for such a long circuit, as they overheated during testing. The wheels were redesigned and enlarged to better handle the length and stress of the ride. British Rail's involvement left a noticeable mark on the final construction. In many sections, the coaster track was laid on wooden railway sleepers rather than concrete footers, and these sleepers were supported by traditional railway track ballast. Tunnels featured stylings more common to railway infrastructure than amusement park theming, giving the ride a unique character. Interestingly, Staveley hadn't initially planned to break any records. It wasn't until a colleague remarked on the sheer scale of the design that the team began to wonder whether they might be building something truly historic. Somebody was sent to Ripon to purchase a copy of the Guinness Book of Records, and sure enough, they confirmed that the track length that they had ordered would eclipse the current record holder. At 7,442 feet, the new ride would take the title of the world's longest roller coaster, overtaking the Beast at Kings Island in the United States. The station for the ride was equally massive. Built from timber, it stretched the length of 2 entire trains. As the project neared completion, excitement grew. Robert Staveley himself became the first test rider, climbing aboard a train that hadn't yet been fitted with restraints. To keep him in place, he was tied down with rope. To build buzz for the new ride, a week-long naming contest was held on BBC Radio 1's Simon Mayo Breakfast Show. The winning entry was revealed as the Ultimate. But while the ride was nearly complete by spring 1991, the road to opening had been anything but smooth. Delays and design changes had pushed the budget from an estimated £1.2 million to over £5.2 million, placing a huge financial strain on the small park. And yet, with the opening day fast approaching, the excitement was undeniable. But would the ride live up to the hype? Could Lightwater Valley's biggest gamble become its greatest success? On July 17, 1991, anticipation filled the air at Lightwater Valley. After years of planning, construction setbacks and ballooning costs, the Ultimate was finally ready to open. Crowds gathered in the summer sun, press lined up with cameras ready, and standing among them was British boxing legend Frank Bruno, invited to help launch what was now officially the world's longest roller coaster. Guests approaching the ride were greeted with an imposing wooden structure, unlike anything else in the park. The station building itself was enormous, stretching over 170 feet in length. Clad in timber and overshadowed by the first lift hill, it gave riders a glimpse of what was to come. And that was by design. Much of the Ultimate was hidden in the dense woodlands to the southwest of the park, far beyond what most guests could see. Its full layout remained a mystery. Once inside the station, guests boarded one of the Ultimate's 38 passenger trains, seated two across in bulky plastic seats. At the front of each train was a mock fiberglass steam locomotive, somewhat fitting for a ride that used actual railway construction techniques. In its debut year, trains featured over-the-shoulder restraints, but these would be replaced with more comfortable lap bars during the 1992 season, due to rider complaints. Dispatched, the train crept out of the station onto a short straight section of track, curving gently to the left before engaging with the first lift hill. At 102 feet tall, the hill wasn't record-breaking in height, with the trains making a slow climb to the top. By the time the final cars cleared the chain, the front was already dropping, dragging the rear riders over with a jolt of airtime. The first drop wasn't overly steep, but it set the pace for what followed. A series of small airtime hills flung riders upwards, punctuated by shallow curves that guided the train through open fields and towards the tree line. Here, the Ultimate slowed in speed, progressing through the forest at ground level, before encountering a series of 5 bunny hills. These small hills slowed the train further, bleeding off enough speed before the second lift hill. Unlike traditional layouts, the Ultimate's second lift was over half a mile from the station. The ride didn't return to the main park until the very end. The second lift climbed to 107 feet and was noticeably different from the first. It began like any standard lift hill, but soon transitioned into a long, flat section near the top. The track curved gently to the left, giving riders a brief moment to take in the scenery before the descent began. The second drop dove into the forest, hidden from view. Riders were pressed into their seats at the base, then flung side to side through a series of fast banked turns. The track followed the terrain aggressively, rising and falling with the contours of the land, curving through tight bends that sent passengers crashing into the sides of the cars. The surroundings became a blur of green as trees rushed past. Then came a pair of airtime hills, giving riders an upward lift before being slammed back down into their seats. A tight left curve sent the train barrelling into a short tunnel, followed by a helix climbing to the left. The train straightened out, only to dive immediately into another helix, this one descending to the right before entering a second longer tunnel. The final part of the ride was raw, untamed and relentless. After over a mile and 6.5 minutes of track, the train emerged into the open once more, finally gliding into the brake run, catching a short lift hill back into the station. Reception to the Ultimate was nothing short of overwhelming. The small family-run park had managed to construct a ride that stood shoulder to shoulder with landmark coasters around the world. Opening day riders described it as petrifying, the best ride I've ever been on, and completely mad. The layout through the woods was especially praised for how it blended the ride into the natural landscape, giving the sensation of speed. Television news reports were eager to dramatise the ride's intensity. Reporters described its sections with names like the Ripple, the Wiggle, and Badger's Set Plunge. They called out its 2 takeoff points and didn't shy away from noting its aggressive nature. Even Frank Bruno, never one to back down from a challenge, admitted that 2 rides were quite enough. Others weren't so generous, with one reporter complaining of a twisted neck. The ride's roughness almost became as legendary as its length. But that was part of the Ultimate's identity, wild, unpredictable, and unlike anything else. And while opening day had been a success, the coming years would reveal that maintaining a ride of this size and intensity was no easy task. The opening of the Ultimate was a major turning point for Lightwater Valley. The ride had the desired effect on attendance, increasing gate figures by 35%. By 1992, the park had attracted over 500,000 visitors, quite the achievement for the small North Yorkshire attraction. The Ultimate had done its job. It had put Lightwater Valley on the map. But behind the excitement and headlines, early signs of trouble were beginning to surface. Just 11 days after the ride's debut, the first of many incidents occurred. A low-speed collision in the station sent 5 people to hospital with whiplash injuries. This time it was only minor, but the park would soon learn that operating the world's longest roller coaster wouldn't be without its challenges. More serious issues emerged soon after. As the 1992 season came to a close, detailed inspections uncovered worrying signs of stress throughout the ride's trains. Cracks were found in 2/3 of the bogies, 3/4 of the chassis units, and 3 axles. The designer recommended reducing the ride's operating stresses. Park officials acknowledged the severity of the situation, with 16 of the 23 axles condemned. While the failures were not considered potentially catastrophic, they were a significant cause for concern, and an expensive one. Modifications were made, but the problems with the trains persisted. In 1995, one of the axles fractured during operation, and a set of wheels detached from a train carrying 38 passengers at full speed. The car dropped onto the track and continued for half a mile, before finally coming to a stop. Several riders suffered shock and bruises, and one sustained a minor fracture. The incident caused extensive track damage and led to a £15,000 fine for Lightwater Valley. Compounding the mechanical issues were the unpredictable challenges posed by the ride's rural setting. Surrounded by fields and woodlands, the Ultimate found itself vulnerable to the local wildlife. On 2 separate occasions, trains collided with deer that had wandered onto the track. In June 1994, one such accident resulted in a deer being struck by an oncoming train. Some riders were showered with blood, and a 12-year-old boy was taken to hospital. Then, on 27th of September 2014, another deer was hit during a morning run, again causing riders to be splattered with blood. The ride reopened just 30 minutes later, with the park claiming the deer had bypassed the perimeter fence during the night. While these events were shocking, the underlying truth was that the Ultimate had simply been too big. The spiralling costs of its construction and the ongoing issues with maintenance plunged park owner Robert Staveley into financial difficulty. Although the Ultimate had put Lightwater Valley on the map, it would remain the largest ride ever built at the park. Nothing on its scale would be attempted again. In the mid-1990s, ownership of the park was handed down to Robert's children, Amanda and James. Then, in 1997, Lightwater Valley was sold to Queensborough Holdings for £5.2 million, the same amount it had cost to build the Ultimate. The sale marked the end of the park as a family-run business. Queensborough Holdings, which also owned Pleasurewood Hills at the time, operated the park through their Leisure Great Britain division. But their commitment was short-lived. Within just 11 months, the company put the park back up for sale, deciding to refocus their business strategy. No suitable buyer emerged for several years, and the park continued to operate in limbo. 2001 brought a new lease of life, as Lightwater Valley was purchased by Ball Investments and placed under the management of Heritage GB. This new ownership brought renewed hope. investment came quickly. New branding, mascots and rides were introduced. In the first year alone, the park added Treetop Twister and Black Widow's Web, but that fresh start was quickly overshadowed by tragedy. Just months after opening, Treetop Twister was involved in a fatal accident. 2 carriages collided, resulting in the death of a 20-year-old woman. The incident sent shockwaves through the park and the wider industry. Attendance plummeted. Guest figures fell well below the highs seen in the 1990s. In the years that followed, the park focused its efforts on family-friendly attractions, gradually stepping away from the thrill ride market. For much of the 1990s, the Ultimate held a proud title. It was officially the longest roller coaster in the world. At over 7,400 feet in length, its sprawling course through the Yorkshire countryside stood unmatched. But in 1999, that record was finally overtaken. In Osaka, Japan, Expoland introduced Diadosaurus, a unique entry into the record books. Rather than building an entirely new ride, the park combined 2 pre-existing tracks into one extended circuit. While it technically surpassed the Ultimate's length, the method of achieving the record left some questioning its legitimacy. Just 1 year later, the title would change hands again, this time with no room for debate. Steel Dragon 2000 opened at Nagashima Spa-Land in Japan, stretching an astonishing 8,133 feet. Built to coincide with the start of the new millennium, it took the record definitively and has held on to it ever since. Through the 2000s and 2010s, the Ultimate remained a defining icon of Lightwater Valley. Its sheer scale and unprecedented layout continued to attract thrill seekers, but behind the scenes, maintaining the massive ride became increasingly difficult and costly. Its location deep in the countryside meant much of the layout was far from guest areas, making upkeep a logistical challenge. Over time, the ride's infamous roughness only grew worse. Part of this may be due to its unconventional construction. Using railway sleepers instead of traditional coaster supports may have allowed some footers to gradually shift, impacting ride smoothness. Meanwhile, Lightwater Valley was evolving. As the years went on, the park began to focus more on families with younger children, adding gentler attractions and dialing back its thrill ride identity. The Ultimate, once the proud headliner, began to feel more and more irrelevant to the park's evolving audience. In 2020, the COVID-19 pandemic forced closures across the UK, and the Ultimate did not operate that season. Then, in 2021, a new chapter began, when the Brighton Pier Group acquired the park. Hopes were raised for the coaster's future when the group issued a statement stating, "The Ultimate is not dead in the water. It needs some work doing on it. We are more than conscious of its iconic status. If we can do something with it, then we will." But despite the optimism, the ride never reopened. On July 11, 2023, Lightwater Valley confirmed that the Ultimate would be dismantled. The statement cited the prohibitive costs of upgrading the ride to modern safety standards and aligned the decision with the park's shift toward a family-focused identity. Demolition began later that month, with final clearance reported by April 2023. The Ultimate helped define Lightwater Valley during its most ambitious era. For a small independent park nestled in the North Yorkshire countryside, constructing the world's longest roller coaster was nothing short of extraordinary. It was a bold move that instantly put Lightwater Valley on the map, transforming it into a destination for thrill seekers and carving out a distinct identity in a competitive industry. Its scale and ambition were unprecedented for a park of its size, stretching across woodland, climbing 2 lift hills, and covering almost 1.5 miles of track. But with that ambition came a host of challenges, from costly maintenance and structural wear to serious incidents and financial strain. The Ultimate was a ride of extremes, one that pushed boundaries, but also exposed limitations. The Ultimate remains one of the most ambitious, yet flawed, attractions ever built. It wasn't smooth or cutting edge, but it was unforgettable. Its rough, unpredictable nature gave it a raw intensity unlike anything else, an experience that couldn't easily be replicated. It became a legend in its own right, known not for perfection, but for daring to do something entirely different. Though the ride is now gone, the Ultimate lives on in the minds of enthusiasts and visitors alike. It was one of a kind, and in many ways, it always will be.